As long as our technology is out in the world, the threat to Wakanda remains.
Then welcome to the war dogs.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the Eyes of Wakanda. Now, we are covering all 4 episodes in this video, but don't worry, we will be spoiler-free, and I'm going to chapter mark each video for you. Now, the first episode is titled Into the Lion's Den, which of course refers to Noni entering the home of the lion, but also her joining the war dogs at the end of the episode. Now, Noni is about to venture out from the safety of Wakanda, and this first episode sets up her greatest challenge. Will she remain a servant of Wakanda, or will she turn away, like the lion and the war dogs that he trained? We know that Noni left the Dora Milaje because she didn't like to take orders. So after becoming a war dog, how long until she stops taking orders from the king? Remember guys, the Dora Milaje are the king's guards that we have seen pop up in movies and shows ever since Captain America Civil War, and they are total badasses.
Move, or you will be moved.
Stop, or you will be stopped.
The intro to the show is gorgeous. It looks hand-drawn, just like how the episode appears to be hand-painted. This show is a historical epic, showing what Wakanda has been up to before they reveal themselves to the world. So, in this opening, we see conflicts around the globe, with Wakandans observing these events. First, we see the lion striking the ground with his staff, and then pieces of it breaking off, showing how he scattered vibranium artifacts across the world. And then we see his image looming over his fleet of ships. This then leads us to Noni and the Greeks in the Trojan War. We opened on Crete in 1260 BC. Now, the opening shot of Crete shows 3 eagles overhead. Now, eagles are significant to the island because they are a symbol of Zeus, and Crete is the traditional birthplace of Zeus. Now, Crete in this time period was a nautical trade hub, trading olive oil, grain, and other products.
By a sundial.
The natives of Crete are called the Minoans, and at this time period, they were dealing with mainland Greeks trying to conquer their island after they were weakened by the eruption of a nearby volcano. And when they first see the ships, someone screams,
Raiders from the sea! We must run!
And this is a nod to why the Minoans eventually deserted their coastal settlements and moved toward the mountains, easier to defend from coastal raiders. So, the Lion's fleet is showing up to sack this city exactly when they were unprotected by a major empire. Now, the lion iconography is interesting. Obviously, the Wakandans serve the panther god Bast, seen here in Thor: Love and Thunder. But in the comics, the Wakandans have gone to war with other nations who worship other gods. In fact, in the excellent Ultimate Black Panther book that's out now, they are waging a war against the followers of Khonshu, the bird skull god from Moon Knight.
Go back to sleep, worm.
Hello?
But in this episode, the lion isn't trying to be the avatar for an existing deity, he thinks he is the deity. This is why when he storms the island, his vibranium weapons look like magic to the ancient people, so they believe that he is a god. And when this Crete warrior attacks him, he screams,
After the false god!
foreshadowing what Noni says to him before their last fight.
He is no god.
Are you willing to die for an imposter?
And then we flash back to the origin of Noni being given the assignment to bring down Nakati, aka the lion. Akea, the leader of the Dora, shows her these projections through sifting sand. And this is really cool. Remember, the opening to Black Panther was told through a similar kind of shifting sand, and the Wakandan holograms also mimic this appearance. So I think what we're seeing is a rudimentary version of this technology that uses vibranium fragments and falling sand to create shapes. And this is why, years later, the Wakandans still create holograms that move like sand, because that's the way their projections have always looked. Noni escapes from captivity and finds that the lion's forces don't have a headquarters on land. They tie their ships together at night. And this is showing us that his people are mobile, like pirates or scavengers. It's even implied that he gathered his forces from around the world, like the Shield Maiden is a Viking. And also, notice that the front of her bow is a goat skull that she fires her arrow through, a very cool and totally impractical design. Later, we also see that she has a lion carved into her chest armor, and the show is just full of little design details like this. But the lion has other warriors from around the world. This man wears a samurai shoulder guards, and he is credited as Ronin swordsman, and this guy is credited as a Samoan warrior. And this assassin looks like he's from the Middle East, although that is a pretty big generalization on my part. So the lion, probably through his war dog assignments, has traveled all across the world, slowly gathering followers. It's also showing how the lion's kingdom transcends national borders, which is why they operate from ships.
Hey, you know, how you doing after that big month? You checking in, you doing okay?
Dude, not bad. I mean, you guys know July was one of our busiest months ever with Superman and the Fantastic Four both coming out a couple weeks apart. And stressful times like that used to really get to me, and I would rely on my bad oral fixation habits. Like for me, it's squishing one eye really hard or licking my lips or biting my tongue. So instead, I replaced my facial tics with Fume. They're the sponsor of this video. Now, I'm sure you guys have your own bad habits that you would like to quit, especially in social situations when you feel anxious or just bored. For me, Fume has been a game changer. Fume does not use smoke or vapor, just natural flavored air that gives you something to reach for without the chemicals. Studies have shown that quitting a bad habit cold turkey is actually really bad for you. So I like having something to reach for when I feel that urge. This is a great alternative to those harmful habits. Guys, this is an award-winning flavored air device that does not use combustion, and it's not even electronic. You can use it anywhere. No smoke, no vapor, no chemicals, just natural flavored air. See, it has these plant-based cores that just taste great. In fact, they just introduced mango, my new favorite flavor. It's bolder than past flavors I've tried, and I recommend it if you want to switch things up. These are non-toxic flavors and a guilt-free alternative with natural ingredients. But you guys know, I also love this magnetic, fidget-friendly design that makes this incredibly satisfying sound. Guys, more than 500,000 people have already added Fume to their daily routine, and I totally get why. It's simple, satisfying, and doesn't come with any of the downsides of your old bad habits. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack using my code ScreenCrush, you will get a free Fume topper. It's this rubber piece on the end so you can chew on the end of it. It's great for oral fixation anxiety. So if you've been thinking about changing your habits, I think Fume is the perfect first step. Go to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush or scan the QR code on screen right now to grab yours today. Now, back to what I was saying. Now, in the ship's hold, the Lion's guards are offering people food if they submit to his control.
Those who embrace this new life under his divine hand will rise. Those who resist will be convinced.
In other words, what they are offering people is a life of comfort in exchange for their freedom. And I think this is a message intended to reflect our world today, where we trade numerous freedoms like privacy in exchange for comforts. The Shield Maiden also tells the woman to smile, which is sexist and controlling. In the modern world, a man telling a woman to smile is like saying, hey, your frown is depressing me, so be happy. That's why Carol reacted like this.
How about a smile for me, huh?
How about a handshake? You're gonna give me your jacket, your helmet, and your motorcycle, and in return, I'm gonna let you keep your hand.
Then Noni has to fight her way across the ship, and the action in this show is amazing. In addition to all the design details that I mentioned earlier, we also get these really fun, immersive, imaginative moments. Like when we briefly see the fight from the Shield Maiden's point of view so we can just catch a glimpse of Noni escaping. So all of this is intercut with the Lion gathering his weapons and armor, and the vibranium has the same purple glow that we see in the films. The episode also deals a lot with truth versus appearance. The women are enslaved, but they're expected to smile. The people appear to be free, but they're actually enslaved. And Noni swims underneath to find that the Lion's empire is built on captivity and death. Also, Noni was told that the Lion deserted Wakanda, but then he reveals the truth.
When you deserted Wakanda?
No, when Wakanda sent me. Yeah.
It turns out he is a war dog, much like Killmonger's father in Jobu and Nakia in Black Panther 1. He tells her,
You are the only one that has made it this far.
And this is important because Noni is actually more like the Lion. She defies orders, she's stubborn and independent. There was a risk in sending her out against the Lion because she could easily join his forces. And there's also a parallel here between the Lion and Killmonger. Killmonger wasn't trained in Wakanda, but the United States military and CIA trained him to destabilize and overturn nations. He's essentially a Wakandan war dog that's from America. And remember, Killmonger's training almost resulted in Wakanda taking over the world and overthrowing the United States. So then the Lion retreats into his room of tapestries. Again, we're seeing a dichotomy here between the truth and the lie. The tapestries depict people who are enslaved, with the Lion standing above them. I mean, we see the Lion depicted here as a god. But these are just tapestries. They rip and burn easily, much like the Lion's self-delusion.
What do you mean?
Well, as he's talking about freeing people, we see his smiths crafting manacles. And there's also a bitter historical parallel here. For centuries, Europeans colonized parts of the world, and they took slaves, insisting that they were civilizing these people and telling them that slavery and genocide were for their own benefit. The Lion is basically Hydra.
The chained sacrifice today to build the world of tomorrow.
Hydra created a world so chaotic that humanity is finally ready to sacrifice its freedom to gain its security.
And this line is key.
When you have suffered as you have, benevolence can look like bondage.
The lion created an inverse of how he felt. He had freedom in Wakanda, but he felt constricted by Wakandan sovereignty. And then we get the boss fight. Notice how his cloak has teeth on the side, almost like its jaws, and notice the sound when he throws the cloak. That is a very similar sound to Cap's shield. This means that the cloak was also made of vibranium, or, like Claw said,
they sew it into their clothes.
I love when the fight is briefly on these circus silks. It reminded me of the quiet elegance of the duel between Li Mu Bai and Jin Yu in Crouching Tiger. Now, the fight leads up to a moment when we think Noni is outmatched, but the lion offers her a chance to join him, and she says,
So you see.
Your delusion? Yes.
So the whole episode was leading up to that one line. Would Noni do what's easiest and accept his lies in exchange for safety, or does she do the hard thing and fight back against him? She fights back. Now, she wins by using pieces of his own armor against him, so it's appropriate that the tools of Wakanda defeat a rogue Wakandan. But he also takes her eye, which is often a metaphor for gaining wisdom in a new perspective, kind of like Odin sacrificing his eye for knowledge. And I should point out that the lion seems like he's a spiritual precursor to Killmonger, who also wore a lion's mask. The two of them were Wakandan warriors sent into other countries to destabilize them, and they each have delusions that they could liberate the world through slavery and the power of Wakandan vibranium. And at the end of the episode, Noni is unable to reacquire this vibranium axe, which looks just like the axe that Killmonger recovers from the Museum of Great Britain. Oh, is it the same axe? Maybe, but probably not. The curator says,
also from Benin, 7th century.
So the axe was actually taken centuries after this episode takes place. But all of the events of this episode could have taken place off the coast of the country of Benin, which is on the southern coast of Africa. After all, we don't know where all these boats were lashed together, so the lion could have been headquartered off the coast of this country, and then the axe would have been recovered by the Fula tribe. And the episode ends with Noni joining the war dogs. After losing an eye, she has gained the clarity and purpose to understand her own life and where she fits in the world. And episode 2 takes us to the Trojan War. Oh yeah, like blowing up those funny balloons and making them fight. No, the Trojan War was a conflict that took place a few decades after Episode 1. The TLDR is that the Greeks tried to invade the city of Troy after a Trojan named Paris kidnapped Helen, the daughter of the Spartan king. Or she left to marry him, depending on whose side you're on in this battle. But the Trojan War, while it was based on real events, was highly fictionalized by Homer in the Iliad. And this episode is a mix of the Iliad and actual historical events, hence the title, Truth and Lies. In Homer's telling, the gods were heavily involved in the conflict, and also, it's likely that Achilles did not exist in real life, although he could have been based on a real hero from the war. In mythology, Achilles is like a deep predecessor to Superman. He was born on Earth but gifted powers by his mother, the goddess Theta, when she held him by his ankle and dipped him in the river Styx. But his ankle was left vulnerable, which is why an arrow to the ankle kills him in the book, and why we call this an Achilles heel. This episode also features the hero of the Odyssey, Odysseus, who is a kind of proto-Batman, because it was said that he was a man who was, quote, skilled in all means of contending. And of course, he's the genius who realized the Trojans may be able to fight off a force of 100,000 men, but they can't resist a good horse.
Is that a pony?
So we begin outside the walls of Troy, showing a skeleton gripping a Greek flag with laurels. Now this siege lasted for 10 years, so this is showing us how long the war has dragged on. Now in myth, Achilles had superpowers. He was super strong, and spears and swords could not pierce his skin. And of course, in the MCU, aliens like Thor and Hercules are the inspiration for these myths. But to me, I think that Achilles in this episode is just a really good fighter, and the long jumps that he takes are more exaggerations made by the animators. But he does also stand up to a vibranium blast, so maybe he's got just a little bit of Zeus in him there somewhere. Notice that the battering ram bears the Omega symbol. This is the last letter of the Greek alphabet used to signify an ending, because this is the last phase of the war. Like Memnon says,
The beginning of the end of Troy is in our sights.
During the siege, Amazonian archers guard the wall, and this is kind of based on history. Even though Amazons are supposed to be Greek, some historians think that female-led cultures that inspired their myth actually migrated from Greece to the Eurasian steppes and Asia Minor. So this is Asia Minor and this is Troy. Kind of fits. Odysseus' plan is to distract the Trojans with a frontal attack while sending an elite force in through the side. Now, Memnon is also in the Iliad. He was the king of Ethiopia who fought on the side of the Trojans. But this episode is showing us how that legend got the story wrong. Memnon was actually a friend to Achilles, but was perceived by the Greeks as a traitor. He uses the same vibranium-enhanced telescope that Noni used last episode. Notice the vibranium purple hue in the viewfinder. And then he spots Helen's vibranium necklace, while Paris is casually getting a massage next to her. Now, I think these are still artifacts that the Lion brought into the outside world. They have been disseminated throughout the Mediterranean region. So for Noni, sending Bacchae to reclaim it is like finishing her first mission from decades earlier. And just like in the Iliad, Achilles is a prideful, angry bro.
Achilles, we must go. No, we have come too far to give up now.
But also, like in the book, he's very loyal to his friends. Memnon uses vibranium to heal his hand, just like T'Challa used the Cameos beads to temporarily heal Ross in the movie Black Panther. And when he tells Achilles,
we fight for home,
he is technically telling the truth. He fights for Wakanda, while Achilles thinks he means Greece. And this is one of a series of lies in this episode, going back to the title, Legends and Lies. Now, we know the legend of the Trojan War and Achilles, but we also see how that legend grew from historical events that were reshaped by time and telling. Now, for Bacchae, he's not sure who he is, his old self or this new lie that he has created, but I'll talk about that theme later in the video. He uses a communicator to speak to Wakanda.
Yeah, how does that work anyways? They got like a radio or something?
You know, they might have already invented shortwave radio like ham radio, or maybe vibranium is able to reach out to other vibranium. Now that's an interesting idea because we've seen how ingesting vibranium can lead you into the spirit world. So maybe the spirit world also connects all vibranium together. And by the way, the text on this communicator is just the alphabet. This soldier calls Memnon
barbarian,
which is actually very historically accurate. The word comes from the Greek barbaros, which literally means outsider. Greek pride at the time considered anybody who was not Greek to be seen as a barbarian. Before the final battle, Achilles gives Memnon a charm bearing a trident, a totem of the god of the sea, Neptune. So I think this is likely a symbol of Achilles' mother, the sea goddess Thetis. Or at least this is how the legend of him having a sea goddess mom grew. And then he talks about retirement.
You will see, brother, when we finally lay down our swords in the grass and enjoy the peace we have won.
Now, Achilles also talks about this in the Iliad, dreaming of the day when he can return to Greece and find peace. But, just like in the episode, he dies in battle. Now, during the Odyssey, which takes place after the Trojan War, Odysseus meets Achilles in the underworld, and he basically tells him that none of that stuff was worth it and being dead sucks. And then we get to Odysseus' final plan to make a horse so awesome the Trojans wouldn't ask any questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty sweet horse person. Let it in, let's party.
Right? Inside, one of the Trojans jokes,
I would have thought the Greeks would send an olive branch.
And this is because the goddess Athena gave this gift to Athens to symbolize peace and prosperity. And not one of the Trojans actually thought to check out that obvious trapdoor underneath it. Now the ruse doesn't last long, and Memnon deserts his friend to retrieve the necklace. And I love the way he's drawn here. You can actually see how torn he is on his face, because his handler told him not to return home without the necklace. Or, as the Greeks would say,
come back with your shield. On it.
But think about what this means for Memnon. He's being told, you do not have a home until you betray your new friends. He is being asked to literally sacrifice his new life for Wakanda. And in a sense, you can say that here's really two different people, Memnon and Bacchae, as he says later on.
I am still getting used to hearing that name.
So in this mission, Bacchae has to kill Memnon in order to return home. Achilles is pinned in, Jon Snow style. And Memnon infiltrates the palace to take the necklace from Helen. And I love that Paris is like just dumb as a rock.
Just a few more things.
Now, of course, Achilles assumes that Memnon is a traitor who has only infiltrated the palace to help Helen escape. And Memnon tries to reason with him.
Achilles, I am your friend, but this is not about you and me.
Now, the real twist of the knife is when Bacchae says,
just let me go home.
And this is when Achilles realizes that Greece was never his friend's home, and that the others were right about him being a spy. Now this makes Achilles feel small and foolish, and just like in myth, he has a temper.
Home!
After Achilles sees the power of vibranium, he wants to keep it for Greece. Very Boromir.
A gift to the foes of Mordor. Why not use this ring?
So Memnon activates hidden vibranium armor that he's probably been keeping up his shoulder pad for years and easily defeats Achilles. But this is where we get that title, Legends and Lies. He slices his tendon to win, and in myth, this becomes a story of a Trojan arrow striking an invincible man at his only weak spot, which was the eventual inspiration for kryptonite. He lays coins on his eyes and says,
"For your ferryman."
And the ferryman he's talking about is Charon, who ushered souls across the river Styx to Hades. And I love the detail that we actually see his bloody leg in the water. Now afterwards, Bukai returns to Wakanda, and we meet Noni decades later after she has taken over Akaye's job as leader of Wakandan security. And big shout out to one of our team members, Elias, who is an expert in Greek history, who also pointed out the director Noni could be a nod to director Nick Fury, eye patch and all. And this is where he tells her that he is not sure who his true self is anymore. Is he the man he pretended to be for 10 years, or his original self born in Wakanda?
But now, back among my people, I feel more alone here than I did out there.
And she warns him that he can get lost in that outside world. And when she says this, you know she's thinking about the lion and his delusions of grandeur. His time out in the world corrupted him and made him think that he was a god. But being a war dog means that you can go out into the world, but you'll never feel at home in Wakanda again. Now we saw this with Nakia in the movies, but I also think this is an important metaphor for veterans who don't always get to truly return home after war. But there's also a connection here to the African diaspora. After Africans were enslaved and taken from their homes, their ancestors can still struggle with a sense of unbelonging in a world that's dominated by white culture. But this is also a relatable story for any immigrant or anybody who has moved away from home. You're always a little bit of your past and a little bit of who you are now. The Black Panther franchise has always been about finding this balance between Wakanda and the outside world. But now we're seeing individuals struggle with that in their own lives. Man, I love this show. Now, I should mention that Marvel Animation always ends with this shot of T'Challa from the show What If? That's because this was Chadwick Boseman's last role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with the episode releasing after he passed away. Now we're in China in the year 1400, roughly 2,500 years after episode 2. Now this was during the Ming Dynasty in China, which was one of the country's many cultural peaks. During the Ming Dynasty, the Chinese had flourishing arts, naval power, and literature. And this was also the period that saw the completion of the Great Wall of China. So we begin with Basha sneaking out, and the image on the door here is called a mystic knot symbol, and it combines 6 infinity symbols to symbolize completion, peace, and harmony. He sneaks into the dragon temple with an idol that has a vibranium tongue. Now, in Western culture, we always cast dragons as these big, mean predators, but in Chinese culture, dragons often symbolize good luck, good fortune, and protection. That's why Shang-Chi is protected by a big dragon at the end of that movie. Many sacred altars also feature dragons, and on the way in, Basha has to pretend to be a worshiper. So I'm telling you this so you understand that him stealing the dragon is not just theft. He is stealing something sacred to the village. After escaping, he recovers his hidden Wakanda glider, and this is wild. This means the Wakandans mastered air travel at least 500 years before the Wright brothers, and then they were able to keep it secret for centuries. Now, just like the past 2 episode leads, Basha is a war dog with a more modern designation, Agent 99. Now, more than the other 2 episodes, this one is more of a comedy, and it gives us the official MCU debut of Iron Fist.
But what about the Netflix show?
Well, I'll get to that in a bit. So Basha flies into the waterfall hangar bay, maybe the same waterfall system where they challenged for the right to be king like we saw in Black Panther. And actually remember, episode 1 ended with a shot of these same war dog headquarters. Now the way he flies in, concealed into a hidden hangar, is also similar to T'Challa entering Wakanda through a hologram in Black Panther 1. Now the title of the episode is Lost and Found, which of course refers to Basha finding the artifact, but also Iron Fist recovering it right back. Basha and Nebo drive through the mountain base, showing that Wakandans also have motorized vehicles a few hundred years before Henry Ford ever walked the earth. And for a moment, we see a view of Wakanda that is very similar to the view that Killmonger sees as he dies. And this could be because, look on the opposite side of the city here. You can see water running off this mountain, meaning that the waterfall system might be on the opposite side of the city from the Great Vibranium Mountain. This episode plays more like a screwball comedy than the first 2, with Basha and Nebo hiding their hijinks from High Council member Rakim, kind of like Principal Skinner and Superintendent Chalmers.
I thought we were having steamed clams.
No, I said steamed hams.
Rakim is wearing purple and gold, marking him as a member of the royal tribe. Now, in the artifacts room, we see the lion mask recovered in episode 1 and Helen of Troy's necklace from last episode. Back at the hangar, we see the computers that are used to plug into the ship look like they're at about like a 1980s level of technology, with a 2-colored screen, but manual dials.
Ew, gross, it has buttons.
The text on this screen reads VRPW with a bunch of numbers, and later the glyphs on on the keypad are the Wakandan symbols for the 10 numbers. And then we meet the stowaway Iron Fist. Now, Iron Fist was one of the original Marvel Netflix shows, and it was by far the worst one. So it wouldn't surprise me if they recast or rebooted the character in the next season of Daredevil. In the comics and show, Iron Fist is a millionaire named Danny Rand whose plane crashed in the mountains of China, where he discovered a hidden city called Kunlun. He learned martial arts, punched a dragon, and then became the Iron Fist. Now, Iron Fist is a title that is passed down through the centuries, but the one consistency is the ability to harness their chi and make their fist really, really hard.
He had this hand. I think it glowed.
Now, the Iron Fist TV show had many problems. The budget was too low and the production schedule was so crammed that they didn't have time to teach Finn Jones much fight choreo. And that's a problem because for some reason they did not give him his iconic mask. It's just a bad, bad show. But one standout was Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing. Now, she was great and she loved this character. In fact, she's claimed that she turned down other MCU roles, holding out hope to play Colleen again. So I say, hey, make Colleen Wing the new Iron Fist in the MCU. And I'll go you one better. Her fight in the War Dog cafeteria.
Guys!
That fight was so awesome, showing her flipping and defying gravity. So I would like to see an Iron Fist live action show that employs some old school kung fu movie techniques, use wire work to make her abilities seem truly magical. Now, there are a couple of great animation choices in here. One where we see her reflection in the glass and we notice her just a few frames before Basha does. And I also loved this dolly zoom when he realizes who she is. Like in the real world, you achieve the dolly zoom by backing up a camera while zooming in. But here it's done by the animation artist and it looks amazing. Now, I suppose the title Lost and Found could also refer to their relationship. The two of them had no one in their lives, but then they found each other, and things must have gotten spicy because even their shadows kissed. Their fight spills over into the train system, but I don't know if this is the same train system that we saw in the vibranium mountain in Black Panther. Like those were used to transport vibranium out of the mountain, and these seem more like their internal transports. Regardless, the technology is very similar, but of course improved upon by Shuri centuries later. And when she powers up her fist, the design is just like on the Netflix show, with red energy growing inside of her flesh, showing us her bones and musculature. And my favorite part of the episode was when he captures her with this liquid vibranium, but then the Iron Fist is unleashed to break her free.
I am the Iron Fist!
It is way more badass than anything in season 1 of the Netflix show.
What about season 2?
Haven't watched it all the way through, but I'll get to it someday. There is a lot of shows to watch.
We're really in an era of big TV.
She mentions that she defeated the dragon to become the protector of Kunlun, just like Danny Rand did, and then she is able to focus her chi enough to give a tiny bit of super strength and snap off the tongue.
Oh my god! The whole time!
Now, this is played for laughs, but there is a parallel here with last episode. Had Basha been able to tell her the truth, they could have avoided all of this. But the war dogs have to remain closed off from people that they meet in the outside world. So even though Basha is an idiot, he was obeying protocol. He couldn't let himself get close to Jirani. Such is the life of a war dog. Now, episode 4 is my favorite of the season, and I just want to call out how great the entire team was putting this show together, especially the director Todd Harris. This show is really something special. Now, this episode is set in Adwa, Ethiopia during the Italian invasion and massacre of the country in 1896. In Black Panther, Killmonger wanted to become king of Wakanda so he could right wrongs that white people have committed against Africans over the centuries, and the slaughter of this battle is a prime example. This was also the battle that we saw in the final shots of the closing credits, as well as their bike getting attacked in the woods. We follow an older war dog named Kudu, who's basically Danny Glover in the Lethal Weapon movies.
I'm too old for this shit.
And also the young Prince Tafari. Now, because he's third in line for the throne, he wants to know how he will be remembered. So this episode is about legacy, the kind of world that we leave behind, and whether or not we get credit for leaving that world behind. The war dogs have to sacrifice so much, their lives, their identity, and this episode shows us that they also have to sacrifice personal glory. The most successful war dog missions are kept secret from the rest of the world and even from the rest of Wakanda. Kudu gives us a reminder of why Wakandans don't get involved in the outside world.
A war dog's mission is greater than one artifact. Sometimes that means mitigating any number of dangers to the kingdom.
And this is in line with Njobu's opening narration in Black Panther when he explains the chaos outside of Wakanda.
But as Wakanda thrived,
The world around it descended further into chaos.
Now, Tafari wears purple and gold, marking him as part of the royal tribe, just like Rakim. Kuda is wearing these same colors as the royal tribe, but later Tafari says that he is from the mining tribe, which traditionally wears red and orange, but he is undercover. They're trying to recover yet another artifact, and this time it's the axe that Noni couldn't reach in episode 1. And hey, it turns out I was right. This is the Killmonger axe from the movie. Although he says,
it was taken by British soldiers in Benin, but it's from Wakanda.
But that's not a continuity error. It just means that this axe passed through more hands before it landed in the British Museum. After Tafari recovers the axe, he quotes Noni.
It is the nature of a war dog to walk their own path, not the one set out for them.
And this is a paraphrase of what Akari told her in episode 1.
I always sensed this would be the path for you. I just needed you to find it for yourself.
Now, Noni was a stubborn, independent person, so of course she would teach the war dog she trained over the years to be independent. Tafari explains that the reason he wants to be a war dog is for glory, because, as a third son, he will never inherit the throne. And this is also similar to Killmonger's father Njobu, who was also second in line for the throne, so he chose to be a war dog that went out into the world. His experiences away from Wakanda changed him and made him want to use their power to help people.
All over the planet, our people suffer because they don't have the tools to fight back. With vibranium weapons, they could overthrow every country and Wakanda could rule them all.
And then they run into the Black Panther from the year 2500 with technology similar to what we see in the movies, but way more advanced. She can produce shockwaves like modern Black Panthers, but also has a stealth mode. And I love the sound design here. How she sounds like an animal as she moves and breathes. It gives her this otherworldly feeling that is truly terrifying. Now, when she explains her future Wakanda, it reminded me of the great Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Black Panther about an alternate future where the Wakandan Empire conquered space. It's an incredible story about the fine line between imperialism and isolationism, and it cuts to the heart of who the Wakandan people are, just like this episode does. Now, she's able to send electromagnetic waves into their brains to show them images of the Golden City destroyed by lava shooting bugs from space. The fallen Panther statue could be the one that was carved into the Great Mountain, or maybe this one at the end credits of Captain America Civil War, or maybe it's just there to look cool. The Dora Milaje of the future still wear red, as they have for centuries, but notice that now all of their spears are vibranium powered and glow. The Queen explains that because of their isolationism, Wakanda was too late to help in the fight against the space bugs, so they use their quantum scanner to travel back in time. Now, this is likely connected to the time travel technology that Tony Stark invented in Avengers Endgame. The Avengers use the quantum realm to navigate to different points in time, which is basically what the Queen does, except she stays in stealth mode as she lingers throughout history. In fact, we see that many of the camera angles that we have been looking at past events were presented from her point of view, and this was foreshadowed by having so many episodes present events from literally a character's point of view. We see her watching Achilles die, the overhead shot of Noni, and this overhead shot of Basha looking at the dragon. In each time period, she analyzes the artifacts. Each of these screens reads acquired with the year, and then temporal recon with a number in the lower corner. Now, the years are all 7-digit numbers, which makes me wonder if the first year in the Wakandan calendar is when the vibranium meteorite first landed. The upper left-hand corner of each heads-up display is unique for each artifact. This one reads Lion Mask, Modified Combat Helmet, Destroyer Class. So this tells us that the Lion took his normal War Dog armor, but then altered it into the visage of a lion. The next one reads Trojan Pendant, 12th Gen V Capacitor, which means that this gem was actually built for storing energy for electrical engines. I mean, no wonder it exploded. And finally, the Tongue of Shao Lao, V-Metal Fan Blade. Now, Shao Lao is the dragon that Jorani had to punch in the heart to become Iron Fist. And V-Metal Blade Fan just means that this artifact is only a part of like a cooling fan or something. So even the tiniest fraction of Wakandan tech is more advanced than anything else in the world. And then she says,
a perfect hinge point that, if restored, could set everything right.
And this is the same terminology used in the Dune series when Paul Atreides can see variations of the future and has to choose only one path that his family could use to survive. And then she says,
and it all begins when a forgotten son of Wakanda finds that X.
And of course, this forgotten son is Killmonger, as we see in this final shot of the series. And had Killmonger not found the axe, he would have never killed Claw after his mission, then never brought him to Wakanda, which of course led to him becoming king. And all of these events, of course, convinced T'Challa to reveal Wakanda to the rest of the world. Now, all of these actions are very important to Wakandan history, but they have to remain a secret, because if it was recorded that there was a prophecy to fulfill, then the events of Black Panther would have never happened naturally. Somebody in the royal family would have tried to force Wakanda to reveal itself before the time was right. So when Tafari says that he wants to make a name for himself by returning the axe, he needs to learn that this mission will not bring him any kind of glory, only personal fulfillment. And then we get a battle happening in two places. In the future, where the Queen tries to buy time for their mission to succeed, and in the present day, when they are trying to return the axe. In fact, the structure here is similar to the end of Days of Future Past, when the future X-Men are fighting off an attack from the Sentinels, while events in the past are going to change the dystopian future. Now, I also want to take a second to address the time travel here, because this is all based on something called retrocausality, which means that when you change the past, it changes the future.
Like in Back to the Future.
Exactly, but in Endgame, Hulk explained that this isn't possible.
Changing the past doesn't change the future.
But here's the thing, we have seen retrocausality before in the MCU in the show What If. In the excellent episode, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands, Stephen loses Christine, but then decides to learn the dark arts to bring her back. But the Ancient One sees this happening and splits their timeline into two. So now there are briefly two timelines, one with a good Doctor Strange and one with the Doctor Strange becoming evil. The Doctor Strange fight, and then the winner gets to absorb the other timeline into the new reality. And that's basically what the Queen says here.
Once the X is returned, my timeline will realign with this one and rewrite everything the Horde has done.
And I loved this twist. The War Dog missions have always been to keep Wakanda secret from the rest of the world. But as we see, the War Dog's true mission over the centuries was leading up to the opposite result. It all leads to T'Challa revealing Wakanda's strength to the rest of the planet. And before the Queen dies, she yells, "Wakanda! Forever!" Which is always cool, and I can't hear it enough. And also notice that her time portal is a triangle, a form that has great significance in African and Wakandan culture. We see triangles incorporated throughout the production design of the movies because, according to costume designer Ruth Carter, they symbolize the sacred geometry of Africa, symbolizing the mother, the father, and the child. She also said that the triangles on Black Panther's suit are the Okavango pattern, named after the Botswana Okavango River. Now, the only thing about this episode and the series that I didn't like is that everybody lived.
Kill them all.
I thought it would have been way more meaningful if everybody would have died. It would have really shown what the War Dog sacrifice means. Like, Tafari only wanted glory and for his name to be remembered, so it would have been bittersweet for him to save the world, but for no one to ever know about it. But then again, he does have to stay alive to tell the other Wakandans not to look for the axe, and his mission does stay a secret. So he does learn the lesson that a War Dog sacrifice is for the glory of the state and not for the glory of the individual. Well guys, what did you think of Eyes of Wakanda? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or at me on Twitter, Blue Sky Threads, or on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.